15-559, offered by Ms. Mace of South Carolina.
Pursuant to House Resolution 1316, the gentlewoman from South Carolina, Ms. Mace, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise today in support of my amendment to ensure that no funds in the Department of State Foreign Operations Appropriations Bill from being obligated, expended, or otherwise made available to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, or UNHCR. In 2022, the United States contributed a total of $2.2 billion to the UNHCR, which accounts for approximately 40% of total funding. You might think that given America's outsized role in funding of the UNHCR, that it might work to serve in the national interests of the United States. Unfortunately, this is not the case. Like many international institutions, including the International Organization for Migration, which we debated earlier, the UNHCR has become hostile to American sovereignty and undermined our border security. UNHCR's 2018 report, which the Trump administration wisely voted against, emphasized a need to limit detention of migrants that arrive at our borders, which is inconsistent with federal law and inconsistent with our national interests. We need to be detaining more illegal aliens that arrive at our border, not less. In 2021, in the thick of COVID-19, the UNHCR was actively lobbying the United States to terminate Title 42, which allowed the U.S. to expel migrants back to Mexico or their country of origin. This was one of the most important tools to stem the tide of illegal immigration. While Americans were stuck in their homes under the onerous pandemic restrictions, UNHCR wanted to fling American borders wide open to illegal aliens. And perhaps the most egregious misuse of taxpayer dollars, UNHCR and other international entities hands out cash debit cards and other funds for lodging, movement, and other expenses to migrants in South and Latin America bound for the United States. These migrants receive cards with hundreds of dollars on them, funding migrants from throughout the world to travel to our southern border. UN documents say the money can be handed out as cash in envelopes and transferred to bank accounts for lodging assistance and even for transportation costs to move with migrant caravans. In one Mexican town on the road to the United States, UNHCR was doling out $400 payments every 15 days to migrants, funded on the backs of American taxpayers. These funds are unrestricted and unconditional and can be used for any purpose. America is experiencing the worst crisis at our southern border in our nation's history. And these policies UNHCR is advocating and the cash payments they are handing out to migrants are only making the problem worse. They call these payments cash-based intervention. Well, my amendment ensures that we give the UN High Commissioner for Refugees a cash-based intervention by cutting off federal funding. We cannot continue to fund the invasion of our own country, and I strongly urge the passage of my amendment, and I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I claim time in opposition to the amendment.
Gentlewoman from California claims time in opposition. The gentlewoman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, this amendment would zero out funding for the United Nations Office of High Commissioner for Refugees, which is a global organization established after World War II to help people who lost their homes. They work in 136 countries to provide life-saving assistance, including shelter, food, water, and medical care for people forced to flee conflict and persecution, many of whom have nobody left to turn to. Just last week, the United States recognized World Refugee Day, reaffirming our tradition as a beacon of hope for refugees and persecuted people around the globe. In the United States, refugees contributed almost $124 billion to the growth of the United States economy from 2005 to 2019. According to UNHCR, the overall forced displacement rose to 120 million in May 2024 and reflects the 12th year of a consecutive increase. At this level, the global displaced population is the equivalent of the 12th largest country in the world, which is about the size of Japan. Responsibility sharing is essential to meet humanitarian needs so that all people can live with hope and dignity. No single country can respond alone, and no country is untouched by the impacts of forced displacement. I urge my colleagues to oppose this amendment. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentlewoman from South Carolina is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And we should not be paying people to come here illegally. This is not part of the founding of our nation. And if we're going to talk about growing our economy, I think a lot of us know that there's a lot of value there, then we should be talking about work visas and other programs, not using taxpayer dollars to pay illegals to come here in caravans illegally across our southern border. And let's face it, a nation without borders is not a nation at all, and I reserve.
Gentlewoman reserves. Gentlewoman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. UNHCR advocates for the rights of refugees. They do not advocate on any country's immigration policies. UNHCR also does not support economic migrants, only those that have applied for asylum. And you know, Mr. Chairman, as I close, I must say some of these amendments tonight are just downright mean-spirited. I ask for a no vote. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman reserves. Gentlewoman from South Carolina is recognized.
I reserve.
Gentlewoman reserves. Gentlewoman from California has the right to close.
I ask for a no vote, and I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. Gentlewoman from South Carolina is recognized.
I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Question occurs on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from South Carolina. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from South Carolina seek recognition?
I request a recorded vote.
Recorded